Jayden Quaintance is the mystery man as far as I'm concerned in the 2026 NBA draft class. He's a fascinating prospect, and in large part because he's still so young. He's the second youngest player by a week to Cam Boozer in this year's NBA draft class, despite having spent 2 years in college. So let's take a look at Jayden Quaintance. So first off, these highlights are going to be from his year with Arizona State because he only played 4 games for Kentucky last season. Coming off the torn ACL he suffered in February of 2025, he just never was able to get healthy on a Kentucky team that never really got going and didn't really justify the risk of Quaintance coming back later in the season. He only appeared in 4 games, making one start last year for the Wildcats. And therefore, a lot of my evaluation on Quaintance is based off of his time at Arizona State because there's just not a lot to go off of from his time at Kentucky. Quaintance is a guy who is one of the top 5, top 3 defenders in this year's NBA draft class. He's a guy who is extremely versatile. He measured in at 6'9" barefoot, so depending on how you list him, he's therefore 6'10". 253 pounds with a 7'5" wingspan. So maybe a little bit short for the center position, especially in the modern NBA where it seems like centers are growing to not just be 7-footers, but much more than that. But he makes up for it with a really impressive wingspan, a good standing reach, and being 253 pounds. He's a guy who can also guard on the perimeter. He's a switchable defender. He's certainly one of the top defenders in this class. And the only reason I hesitate to maybe make a more ambitious proclamation is he just did not play really in the past year or so. So he's a guy who can block shots. He can be in the passing lanes. He's really good in his ball screen defense, navigating, hedging, recovering, can make short switches, can switch for more extended periods of time. He covers ground extremely quickly. He's just very mobile and athletic for a player his size. And he's still very young. Again, the second youngest player in this year's draft class. So defensively, he's fantastic. The rebounding is also very good. 8 boards a game last year in 29 minutes for Arizona State, and also 3 offensive rebounds per game. He's a guy who will attack the glass and he's a good rebounder. I don't think he's a great rebounder just yet, but I think he can become one. Offensively is where there's more questions with Quaintance, and that's what I was hoping for him last year at Kentucky. I was hoping to see him get extended minutes, be able to improve on his offensive game. But unfortunately, he just didn't have the opportunity to do so. So because of his injury and then some complications there afterwards, he's a mystery. I'm not sure how much better or how much he's improved with his offensive game. So going back to his numbers at Arizona State, it was 9 points a game. He shot 52% from the field, but 60% on his twos. Pretty good. Just over 1 3 attempted per game at 19%. And the real concern for me is 48% from the free throw line on 3 attempts per game. He is a guy who could make some passes, 1.5 assists, but also 1.9 turnovers. But he does have passing feel. I think some of the turnovers were he's just very young. But he does have passing feel. There were times he'd make some nice cross-court passes. We saw that a little bit in the highlights just a minute ago. He is a guy who his three-point shot is flat-footed. He's got a low arc on it. He is a guy who I just consider a little bit awkward offensively in terms of his role and just figuring out what he needs to do best. He would settle for some mid-range jumpers. As I was saying before, he's an adequate passer, especially from the high post extended area. But he's very much, as of right now, a guy who's going to operate in the pick and roll or off the dunker spot, and his athleticism is going to enable him to get dunks around the rim. He is a high flyer, a guy who can certainly finish through contact and a guy who can play above the rim. And so when I look at a guy like Quaintance and I'm looking at his role and what he can do right now, I think he's a guy who can be an impact defender right away. I think he's a guy who can be a rim running offensive player who can make plays to a lesser extent out of the short roll, find open teammates in the corners. I think he's capable of becoming a guy who develops in that area of his game. And as of right now, I think he's a guy who's going to go somewhere. I wouldn't be shocked. I'd be a little surprised if he goes late lottery. And then I think he'll end up somewhere between, realistically, 15 to 25 in this year's draft. I think he's a first-round pick because of the talent and the upside alone. And I see him as a rim protecting guy, but who's also capable of switching onto smaller guards, which makes him really valuable in the NBA just because of his defense alone. I think the rebounding is going to play up. I think he'll focus on that area of his game. And then I think offensively, he's going to be a little bit limited. We'll see if the jumper ever comes around. But for right now, my player comp for Jayden Quaintance is a shorter Mitchell Robinson, which I think means he can be a heck of an impactful player. And hopefully he can put his health concerns behind him, unlike Mitchell Robinson, whose career has really been hampered by injuries. But if he becomes somebody like a Mitchell Robinson, he's a very impactful player, and you'll be getting real bang for your buck if you take him somewhere in that 15 to 25 range. I just think he's got a chance to be a very impactful defender, rebounder, and then understanding his role offensively with maybe a little bit of upside with the passing feel and maybe, although I wouldn't bank on it, shooting down the line. He's got to certainly improve as a free throw shooter, number one. But in that range of the draft, especially with some of the talented players coming back to college basketball, I think he's worth taking a flyer on. But it is a flyer because of the injury and then the complications last year at Kentucky. As somebody who doesn't have access to their medical reports, he is a risk. But I think in that range, he's a risk worth taking. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, share it with a friend. And until next time, peace.